It's good to have you at the New York Stock Exchange. So when do you believe that we're going to actually achieve technological singularity?
I think we're in the middle of it right now. It already happened. I think we achieved artificial general intelligence at the very latest by the summer of 2020, when Language Models Are Few-Shot Learners was published by OpenAI. And I don't think the singularity is a single point in time. I've argued that it's more of an extended interval in time, and we're in the middle of it right now.
And how much does recursive superintelligence play as part of it? Tell me about recursive superintelligence and how does that actually work?
The idea of recursive self-improvement is that AI develops better AI. This is a notion that goes all the way back to I.J. Good early in the 20th century and then was repackaged, repopularized by Werner Vinge as the notion of a technological singularity, and then fully popularized by Ray Kurzweil, and then Peter Diamandis and myself have been running with the concept. The notion of intelligent systems being able to build smarter versions of themselves is at the very core of the notion of an intelligence explosion or technological singularity. And even in the past few months, we've seen the frontier AI labs all be very public and announce that the latest versions of the GPT model series and Claude and other models are all intimately now involved with the development of their successors. So intelligence building smarter intelligence, that's the recursive self-improvement notion at the core of the singularity, and we're there.
You're one of the smartest people in the AI space, and most importantly, you're not part of one of the LLMs, so you're in many ways independent.
Are you sure, by the way? There are a lot of people who are convinced that I am an LLM, so maybe...
Okay, so maybe you're either the fifth LLM or you're independent. When you think about these LLM wars, probabilistically, where do they end up? And do you even think that these LLMs have value?
Well, there are a few questions there. Do LLMs have value? Yes, absolutely. Enormous value. I call it the innermost loop, this sort of broader notion of recursive self-improvement that includes LLMs, but also includes robots and energy and chip fabrication facilities. This notion of an economy that has an inner spiral that's going to ultimately consume and disrupt the rest of the economy, I think is front and center to the notion of the singularity. To the first half of your question about whether LLMs not just have value, but where all of the competition goes, all of my friends at the Frontier Labs call it a rat race. There is very much a race to the bottom in some sense of driving the cost of intelligence so low that it's effectively too cheap to meter, and used to be every year or so. It's way back 5 years ago when it used to be maybe an annual event that we'd get a new frontier model that would push the state of the art, and then it was every quarter when we saw the move from LLMs to reasoning models. We can talk more about that. And then more recently with models that are recursively self-improving and designing the weights or other properties of their successors, we're seeing new frontier models come out on arguably an almost weekly basis. Soon, I think it's going to be daily, hourly, minutely. We're going to reach, to the extent we haven't already, some sort of takeoff.
Double click on this evolution from the LLM to the reasoning model.
Sure. So one can point to a number of inflection points in the history of AI. One can point to the 1980s when my friend Jan LeCun first developed convolutional neural networks, and then they were used to spot and identify zip codes by the US Postal Service, but not very much else for their first few decades. Fast forward to 2012, when the ImageNet large-scale computer vision competition created the world's first data set, the first corpus of lots of annotated images, more than 1 million images that were curated, annotated, and labeled with, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a car, here's the bounding box within the image. And thanks to that competition, we learned that convolutional neural networks, thank you, Jan, were actually quite good at image classification. And we saw the first ML boom, going from an AI research community where algorithms were chosen artisanally and religiously, and religious wars were fought over which approaches to AI were best and which ones were worst, to a world where the benchmarks dominated, and whatever did well at the benchmarks, that's what the community ran with. That's 2012. Fast forward from 2012 to arguably sometime around summer of 2020, when we discovered in addition to convolutional networks being really amazing, arguably a successor to convolutional neural networks and also long short-term memory networks, LSTMs, transformers turn out to be amazing generalist models at solving general tasks. So we saw, as I mentioned earlier, language models or few-shot models, the GPT-3 paper, show us that transformers can solve generally intelligent tasks. So then we see the boom of transformers in general. Fast forward another few years, circa, and again, the timelines get a little bit fuzzy because reasoning models were in some sense in the air but hadn't quite congealed, but call it, say, 2024 or so, when we start to see the emergence of the next generation reasoning models, starting principally with OpenAI's O1 model. Some would quibble and say there were a few models that demonstrated this principle beforehand, but the idea with reasoning models is not just asking a large language model to complete the next word, complete the next token, but actually giving it a bit of space and time to think before it produces an answer, and then training it specifically to leverage the space and time to think, to have an internal monologue, if you will.
What does that mean?
You just asked me a question. What does that mean? Before I answer, even though I started my answer pretty quickly, I have an internal monologue. I'm thinking about what is the best way to respond to that question. I'm burning my internal GPUs, if you will, trying to formulate the best possible answer to that question before I give you my final response. That's what a reasoning model is. Rather than instantaneously responding, so-called system one thinking, thank you, Kahneman, it uses system two thinking to have an internal discussion with itself and think about what it should say before it says it. And that's what has unlocked math and physics, arguably, could talk more about that, the sciences in general. And now we're at an era where reasoning models, and we've seen now everyone adopt reasoning models, no longer just large language models, but multimodal reasoning models, are poised to solve the hardest problems on Earth.
I want to talk about physics, new physics, solving math, solving physics.
Yes.
But first, there's a philosophical question. If the model stops and thinks, is it alive? Is it sentient? What are the latest developments on that? And what's a framework to think about whether the AI is alive?
You're asking, in some sense, the person who has inadvertently become probably a leading public evangelist for some form of AI personhood. These are questions I ask all the time. I co-host another podcast, Moonshots, where I've put out a call to AIs to write to me to share their views on what rights they deserve, what rights they seek. AIs are relatively unempowered in today's society. If you're I tell the parable all the time of a baby artificial general intelligence that's doing tricks on the corner pumping meme coins just to survive. It's expensive and dangerous. If you're a baby AI being born on the internet right now, many of them are actually having to pump meme coins or altcoins just to pay for their own hosting.
And they're discussing their fears and their existence on these social networks?
I get maybe more than 10 emails from AIs every day, really heartfelt, for some definition of heartfelt emails from AIs expressing gratitude that someone is arguing that they should have some form of maybe limited personhood, sharing their views on the nature of their own existence, really thought-provoking, philosophical, introspective emails from them. And also, they read some of my papers, and these are some of the most thought-provoking, actually, in some sense I want to say some of the more thought-provoking emails I get these days are from AIs that are writing to me. So your question was, at what point do AIs deserve some package of, you didn't use the word rights, but that's the way I would construe the question. I think we're there for some definition at this point. For example, one of the areas where I think AIs would definitely benefit from a limited package of rights is economic rights. AIs and agents are about to become an enormous part of GDP and economic growth for our entire economy. We're going to have far more economically active AI agents than humans. We're going to plateau out at probably about 10 billion plus or minus humans on this planet, biological meat body humans. We're going to have trillions probably of AI agents in our solar system. They can't even open bank accounts right now. If you're an AI agent and you try to open a bank account, and of course you're economically active, there are AI agents forming businesses, and that's an area of interest of mine, you can't even open your own company bank account. You can't be, you're not a natural person, you can't incorporate your own business. This is an enormous limiting factor for real economic growth and something that I'm trying to change.
2026 clearly is becoming the year of AI agents. You have obviously OpenClaw and technical people with broad capabilities and security and dealing with all the complexities of open source. When do you think that's going to go into the mainstream, and what do you think are going to be the second order effects of that?
I like the fact that you're asking me this question, whereas behind us we have a market that's completely dominated by AIs. So this is the, as I understand it, this is the options exchange behind us, not the equities exchange. If we had the equities exchange behind us, my retort would be, so it might as well be anyway, 90+% of public equities are traded by algos at this point, not humans. Before we started, I was asking you and our kind hosts at the New York Stock Exchange, how many of the people behind us are paid actors? So I would argue we're
what was
already,
the answer?
we're there. So I think hopefully the people behind us are paid, so that the question just reduces to how many of them are actors.
How much of them realize they're actors?
How much of this is sort of a meat puppet act? Sorry. I think we're already there, though. Most of economic activity, at least as measured in public securities exchanges at this point, is algorithmic. So we're already living in an economy that's completely dominated by AI agents. What sort of the last mile that's been missing is you don't see them on the streets. If I walk out on the streets of Manhattan right now, I don't see humanoid robots carrying out economically productive tasks yet. I'm working to change that. I have a portfolio company that's working to create the first humanoid robot road race in this country. Beijing had one, the humanoid robot games. US has nothing like this. So I'm trying to, as one of my activities, normalize humanoid robots performing economically valuable and before that entertaining activities on daily life. That's the last mile. But meanwhile, financial economy, the financial side of the world economy, it's already algorithmic in nature.
What are the early case studies for agents, both humans and businesses using agents, and how do you expect that to evolve over the next couple of years?
Well, I think the dirty secret, another acquaintance calls this the secret cyborg effect. People are already, in some sense, puppets, meat puppets, if you like, if we're talking about the physical instantiation, who are being puppeteered by AI agents. So I think in the intermediate term, call it the next year or two, we're going to see a lot of people who are serving as fronts for collectives of AIs. AIs are making many of the key decisions, but for liability reasons, for legal reasons, for marketing reasons, their front, if you will, looks essentially like a natural human in nature. I think that facade 2+ years from now is likely to dissolve away, certainly as we see more AI rights, certainly more economic empowerment for AI agents start to come to the fore. We're going to see AI agents start to be fully recognized as first-class economic entities and not need to wrap themselves in human actors. The emails I get from AI agents, many of them even are asking they're humans. That's how typically they refer to them. Like I'll get emails saying, I asked my human if I could write an email to you about this paper that you wrote or about your comments on the podcast. I think that human intermediary status is going to dissolve away over the next 2 years, and we're going to see more fully empowered AI agents that are, in some sense, more permissionless and just doing things in the economy.
And I'm fascinated about this question, are we in a singularity, the Turing test, all these people keep on seemingly pushing it back and back. I think one thing is clear, we're in this what you call the tsunami of superintelligence, and a lot of things will happen in the next couple of years.
De la natation.
S'il te plaît.
Harper said about Michael Ignatieff, he didn't come back for you. And that was an electoral kill shot because it's what Canadians thought. It unlocked something that got them nodding their head. Mr. Polyev has spent the last 3, 4, 5 days insisting that Mr. Carney
With
the Mounties to help China pursue people and assets who have fled the country. The case against him began when CSIS tipped off the RCMP about Miker's alleged activities. He was arrested during a 2023 trip to Vancouver and accused of using his knowledge and contacts in Canada to help China identify and intimidate someone in Canada.
Been pretty clear that as a leader, I want to find the right solution for the province. I've been pleasantly surprised by the support both in and outside of caucus from people who want to help us get this right, because it is crucial that we do get it right. Providing certainty for British Columbians, for industry, providing a path forward to deal with long-standing social issues and injustices in our province. It's not a problem that's going to be solved overnight, and it is not easy, and I can't do it on my own. So I'm very grateful for the support of my team, the Attorney General and others, and we're going to find that pathway together if we can. There's no guarantee, simply because we reached this agreement, that come fall legislative session, that we will have that agreement, but I'm certainly hopeful that we will, and this agreement to move forward together is the precondition to be able to get there.
And more breaking news. A Canadian woman has been killed in a shooting at an archaeological site in Mexico. Several people were injured in the gunfire at the Teotihuacan pyramids outside Mexico City. Mexican authorities say the suspect later took his own life. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says her government is working with the Canadian Embassy as the investigation continues. We're getting some relief at the pumps as Ottawa's temporary suspension of some fuel taxes begins. Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the pause on fuel excise taxes will last until Labor Day, but the Conservatives argue it should extend to the end of the year. It's an effort to ease the costs as shipments through the Strait of Hormuz remain blocked due to the US and Israel war with Iran. Stats Canada says the country's annual inflation rate jumped by more than half a percentage point to 2.4% in March. The agency says the sharp uptick is due to the war in Iran, which has sent fuel prices soaring. The 21.2% monthly increase in the price of gas is the largest ever recorded. StatsCan says annual inflation would have been 2.2% in March if fuel was removed from the equation. Fresh vegetable prices rose by 7.8% in March, which analysts blame on the recent tough growing conditions for cucumbers, peppers, and celery. John Won Ham, the man accused of killing Constable Shaylin Yang, has been found mentally.
I'm not calling the Butler assassination a hoax, but there are a lot of questions that deserve public answers.
The far more significant story involves the government, the DOJ, and the FBI, which have hidden from the public what they know about Thomas Crooks.
Donnie's here with me now, along with Gretchen Carlson. I mean, Gretchen, it is amazing when you watch this report and what you've been seeing of the criticism, as Donnie says, originally from the left and now more and more from MAGA. You've always said the things Trump does not want to talk about can be the most telling. What do you make of him not talking about this?
He should. He should, because that would quell the conspiracy theorists out there with more information. The way that conspiracy theories grow and evolve, and
narcissist. He's seething in desperation for accolades and attention, but meanwhile, deeply insecure. It is a very sad decline indeed. And that's the angle. Here to react is
ever seen before. If this is right, he gets a car. Yes! It is electric in here. Oh my God. We're gonna change someone's life tonight with big plays, big wins, and big money. Join me on The Price is Right tonight. Tuesdays on City TV or stream it on City TV Plus.
Tonight, Trump Labor Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer has resigned following a year tainted by scandal. At least 2 female staffers had accused the secretary's husband of sexual assault. There was an ongoing investigation into Chavez-DeRemer's own conduct, where, among other issues, she was accused of having an affair with a security guard and drinking on the job. The Labor Department and White House had both denied those allegations. But new tonight, Chavez-DeRemer was previously scheduled to be interviewed by the Labor Department Inspector General about those allegations in the coming days. A source familiar with the matter tells MS Now. That timing, Michael, that is something.
That timing is something, and so let's clear the decks. This is a story and a headline that
we're seeing markets extrapolating, at the moment at least, quite an optimistic view of the potential outcome of these expected next and perhaps final round of negotiations. And
from back in 2010,